Thank you and welcome everyone. Today's event is brought to you by the Shaftesbury Partnership and is supported by WeWebinar, a fantastic online and offline events company that I can highly recommend. I hope you will enjoy not only today's theme, but also, for those of you in frame, enjoy meeting some new people. For over a decade, the Shaftesbury Partnership has been at the forefront of systemic approaches to transforming society and reducing inequality. In the early years, we drew on our team's experience in helping co-found organisations such as T First, the Challenge Network that was instrumental in the design and delivery of the National Citizen Service, and the Trussell Trust, which is the largest food bank operator in the UK. And we've worked on many other initiatives. In all cases, our ventures have been characterised by being innovative, fast-growing, and concentrating on tackling the systemic issues. In this, we complement but do not duplicate other ventures that seek primarily to provide humanitarian alleviation of suffering, or those that concentrate on campaigning and policy making, influencing legislation. Although many of our ventures have also done this. We are now at the point when we want to take the lessons learned and inject our DNA, if you like, our vaccine, as it were, into the wider society, business, and body politic. We have a programme designed for organisations who want to create their own social venture incubators. And accelerators, and we call this program SPX. We're also establishing a school to train others interested in systemic social reform. And of course, we will continue to engage in social venturing to make a direct difference ourselves, and if you will, to keep our muscles honed. If any of these elements are of potential interest, we would love to speak with you, either tonight or afterwards, or you can follow the links in the documentation for this evening. But let me now introduce our co-founder, Lord Wei of Shoreditch, to you. He's going to give our keynote presentation as we embark on a new phase of our journey. As a world and as a country, bounce back stronger and build a resilient Britain.
Well, thank you, Patrick, and thank you all for coming this afternoon, this evening, as well as to those who are going to be listening to this recording afterwards. It's times like this when we realize what matters most and how precious the time is that we all have. So we appreciate so much the many friends, family, and other interested parties from all over the world and the UK who've shown up tonight and who will be listening afterwards to be with us as we mark a momentous moment in our journey. And we hope to begin with you a series tonight that in its own humble way, we believe can help us as a country, as a world, to face the coming years with greater confidence and greater resilience. Indeed, what a year it has been. Indeed, one where we've all had to show incredible personal resilience. Some have tragically fallen due to illness and for other reasons. And we, like you, like many, have lost loved ones. We miss them and we mourn them. As we start to dare to hope that with vaccines and better treatments, we can emerge from lockdowns into the summer sun, it can be tempting to dream that life will return to normal and that what has happened will be remembered as a dark reminder, as a dark nightmare of a time that won't happen again for at least another century. I think that would be a shame. Not just a shame, but it would be wrong to miss up what I believe 2020 has been, which is a wake-up call for the whole world. Because, and I've said and written about this in the weeks and months after even the first lockdown, we live in a different era now, not just because of this pandemic or future ones, perhaps based on other viruses that could jump from animals to humans again, or from strains of bacteria resistant to antibiotics, or because of climate change causing greater unpredictability in our weather, but also because of geopolitical uncertainty and the potential for conflict rising. Indeed, whilst we've seen incredible fortitude, sacrifice, adaptation, and resilience shown by both the British public and citizens of nations around the world, and indeed by frontline key workers, from nurses to care workers to delivery people and many others, this pandemic has highlighted how unprepared we were for what we might call an asymmetric shock, which was neither so serious as, say, an atomic attack, which would have necessitated a military response, a cleanup operation, but nor has it been so trivial as to have been dealt with through our traditional systems and approaches. I believe the lesson we must learn from 2020 is that our societies and economies birthed in the post-war modern era were caught unawares and lacked the resilience, agility, and what Nicholas Taleb calls anti-fragility to meet the threat of this and other potential similar shocks. And we've only got a few years to get ready because other countries have taken note. And we will, I believe, be entering a new kind of race to immunize not just our populations, but our political and economic and social systems from future attacks of this nature. A race in which the last country, institution, and person standing wins. A race in which once a country or a terrorist feels it is ready and sufficiently resilient itself, it can try to take out another country's infrastructure with relatively little traditional military action from previous models of conventional warfare. Perhaps a drone attack, a major hack, for example, and know that it can't be easily hit back, removing the deterrents that we normally have to avert such conflicts. Now, my purpose here is not to scaremonger. Goodness knows we've had enough to worry about this past year with all the health challenges we've faced. And no doubt those involved in national security will be working on how we can improve our responses to what I've just described. But now we've had our Dunkirk, as it were, and our Battle of Britain over the winter, and just possibly with the vaccination program, our D-Day, if you like, has begun, to stretch the military analogy. The question does need to be asked: how do we, the people, the communities, the businesses, the public bodies, how do we make sure we never have to do things like lockdowns again, if we can help it? And if we do, that we will not be hit in quite the same way again. In short, how do we not just build back, but bounce back better? Not just this time, but every subsequent time, like an immune system that gets stronger the more you hit it. Not primarily from the center or at the center, but everywhere you might strike our country, our countries. So to answer this question, we are inaugurating today our Resilience series, a program of public, private, and hybrid events and roundtables and workshops to look at what the issues are around our resilience sector by sector, from health to education, government to media, climate to migration, and many other issues, and to find consensus around what needs to take place, including any ventures, as well as partnerships and strategies to get ready. We hope that this will create a roadmap for many consortia to prepare the world, prepare this country and others for the world to come, and make sure that every community is resilient for a new era where things, yes, may become more volatile and unpredictable. We're talking about creating a new kind of roadmap or a map, a bit like the Magna Carta in a way, which in its own time signaled a different relationship between power and the center and wider society. But in an era where we give up pretending that we have all the right answers as politicians or in Whitehall, or in any central headquarters or business or charity or community, and where we start to ask the right questions, to stay nimble and be ready to bounce back together every time. And at the end of this process, we would like to create with you and publish a wiki-based living document, the beginnings of a new map, which we might call the Robusta Carta, a strong map, which can be a tool to enable us to create this immune system of the future for our nations together, woven from the conversations, activities, and findings that we hope to catalyze through this series. And using tools such as the one we're going to harness this evening to kick things off, such as Unanimous AI, which will enable groups of us to make decisions like honeybees do, so that we can have an earlier way to discern and detect what's happening, what's coming, and what needs to be done. Because as I wrote last year, we lost sight of the goal of what was begun after the last war, the Cold War, when the Cold War ended. We built this global system we call the internet, which came out of an intent to ensure that the military and that society could operate in the event of an attack, nuclear or otherwise. In many ways, it has served us well, notwithstanding many still lack access to the internet and to the relevant devices. But as we found from using our video calls, even this event this evening, for everything from ballet lessons to schooling, to work, socials, and debating, and making laws, we can see the power of the internet, and our experience this last year also would have been very different without it. But we have to admit it, we lost sight of what the internet was originally for, precisely for emergencies like pandemics. We got complacent, we got greedy, we frankly got lazy. And I'll admit this as somebody who regularly binges on Netflix. The internet pre-2020 was and remains a place for many to make money from. Big platforms selling and advertising in a convenient way and entertaining ourselves with content and cats. Don't get me wrong, there's value in all of the above, despite its excesses, but it should also have been a place where we figured out how to play live band and orchestral music together, where we could carry on with the arts and theatre and museums, even in a lockdown, where we got educated both in school and on a lifelong basis, so we can use both a device in our hands and feet to generate income, where we figured out how to deliver healthcare away from hospitals, where early on, 1/3 of all patients actually caught COVID, and where we learn now how to have better mental health, sleep, eat, and have work patterns that are healthy, rather than subjecting ourselves to endless calls, including Zoom ones, forgive us, that spill into the times when we should have been commuting or seeing loved ones. The internet has saved us, but it could have saved many more of us. And we need to reshape it so it can be that resilient web that, again, saves us in future from each other and from ourselves and from itself. But the flip side of the internet is that our resilience reliance on it has shown that we also need to build resilience in the analog side of life. When we go out and see each other, which I hope we will be able to do very soon. I'm really looking forward to in a few weeks doing that. And we will, I hope, value more what we have in life, those things that we've missed: hugs, color, nature, the sea, holidays, family, beauty, and smells. There's work to be done in the coming years to value and treasure and transform the places, people, and purposes we've often forgotten about or taken for granted, and did not weave into our thinking about the world, resilient or not. So how will we especially help younger kids and even adults learn in future lockdowns, given learning for some is especially hard remotely and via screens? How will we network and have water cooler moments and create space for social and human connection now we know that this cannot easily all be done by Zoom? And how will we preserve space in life for contemplation, for respite, for connection, for worship, together as well as on our own? Ladies and gentlemen, it's time we bounce back, not to the previous status quo, but to a different one, in which we will become again a nimble, agile nation, people, and world. To do so will require analysis, deliberation, sensing, and above all, asking the right questions versus having all the answers. Like, what is stopping us becoming resilient? Why do some things take so long to adapt? What is it about our society, our democracy, our institutions that prevents resilient approaches from thriving? What are the downsides of being more resilient as a society and in our economy? And are we prepared to swallow them? Because resilience has a cost, one you can find creative ways to absorb, like the lakes in Milton Keynes, where I grew up, which actually during times of flooding fill up, but in normal times are places of beauty and entertainment and leisure. Or an idea that I came across recently about using car parks to create raised modular housing on stilts for key workers in places like hospitals, which could double as both nightingale accommodation when the hospitals are full, but also be key worker accommodation as well between pandemics. Are we going to need to study resilience itself as a physical and biological phenomenon in nature and learn how it works, how absorptive capacity is key, and how having latent unused capacity is important, so we're not running so much always on the margins that we have nothing left to give when we need it? For example, when our hospitals are already full in the winter, does that give us enough room to deal with things like pandemics? And from nature, can we learn about how the distribution of energy, messy as it is in a society or an economy, can lead to incredible strength? And there's so much more, and I'm not the expert, to understand from the world of physics about elasticity and elastic and inelastic systems and the link between tightly coupled command and control systems and inelasticity and brittleness, as we've sometimes found over the last year and even before that. But tonight, I'm going to close by raising one other question, which is how our own decision-making capacity needs to be more resilient. It's no longer, in my view, despite the apparent trend in terms of where our laws and the restrictions have been going, it's no longer about the strongest leader or decision maker, the CEO or prime minister. As we've seen, just relying on one person or one group of people to make all the decisions has downsides. In my view, it's no longer about the person who's strongest, or even relying on the person who's the weakest link. That is where the future lies. I think it's about our strong and collective intelligence and passion, which, if harnessed rightly, can allow us to make the right decisions at the right time, to be agile, but to minimize making the wrong decisions. So we need to find ways to make better decisions as the beginning of creating a better, more resilient society. And through that, I believe we can more accurately address the priorities that we need to address to become stronger and to have a posture of strength that allow us to fight back quickly against any shock that hits us as a country and as a world. So tonight, for the first time, I want to introduce a new partner that Shaftesbury Partnership has forged, a new partnership called Unanimous AI, who is actually going to work with us for the rest of this hour to make some decisions about literally how we're going to run our resilience series and how we're going to approach it. And I hope that we can involve everybody on the Zoom tonight in real time to join us in a new form of governance, which majors less on who's in charge or what party they represent, but more on helping us to make better decisions in a more natural way, to make the right decisions more times than not, and thereby enable us to be more resilient, both generally and specifically in the way we're going to be running this series for the coming year. So thank you very much, everybody. Rich, I think there may be a few questions people might have that they might want to put in the chat box. And we're very happy to answer those. But I'm going to hand over pretty quickly to Unanimous to lead us through the next phase. Thank you.
Thanks, Nat, and thank you for a really stimulating talk, reminding us to get back to the bigger picture and think about how we learn good lessons and move forwards on some important topics. We haven't got any questions yet in the chat window. A couple of comments. Someone was coining the phrase bounce back ability, and Nathan making the comment about latent unused capacity and really appreciating that. So if anyone has got any questions, then please jump right into the chat window. We would love to answer those and engage with those before we move on to this exciting new technology of the swarms. So if there is anything, please do drop those into the chat window. We do want to get to those before we move on and engage with the questions as well as we can. So I'm not seeing anything now. Of course, you could be typing a really long question and it's going to take you a while and you're racing and you're thinking he's about to move on. Yeah, please just dive in there with something. Here we go. Andrew's got a question. One of the key questions is about connectivity and about how we share the riches of knowledge and wisdom. So a really broad question there, Nat. Love to hear just a few of your thoughts on that.
Well, it's a truism, isn't it, that a lot of knowledge that we need is stuck in different silos. And I think part of the last few years has been an opening up of data and information and insights. And in a way, the lockdown has kind of democratized that. A lot of conversations, arguably that used to happen in Whitehall or in, corporate offices have now had to, come onto Zoom or into more public fora. And we have to fight, I think, to keep knowledge flowing, because, the wars are coming up, the digital Berlin wars are coming up, if you like. And I think there are many of us who need to kind of learn to be givers of information, to share our ideas, our knowledge. This is why we're running this series. And actually enable others to participate, which is why we're really excited to be launching the wiki at the end of this process or during this process, so that anybody can contribute. I think I was looking into wiki technology, and I was shocked at how it's gone out of date. People are not donating to keep the kind of very technology that gives us Wikipedia. And a lot of it's got stuck behind firewalls or blocked by browsers. We have to fight to keep these more open technologies working, so that we don't end up isolated in our filter bubbles or in our walled gardens.
Great, thanks, Nat. And Nathan just commenting, I think, on the back of what you were saying there about groupthink and people discarding private information because they defer to consensus. We've got some questions coming in now, which is great. Chris is asking, what do you think instinctively are the features that will differentiate between coping well and getting hurt as societies?
Sorry, coping well and getting hurt, did you say?
Yeah, what will be the things that will differentiate between those two, really?
Yeah, I think that I think the wrong response, frankly, and we're on that path, is that we expand government so much that it covers every part of our life. And I think there is a need for emergency action, for humanitarian aid, for furlough, all these things that we've done. But if those things destroy some of the fabric of our societies that people rely on, and we start to lack that resilience, then we're very vulnerable to a follow-on hit. And there's no, you can grow. I mean, I'm giving a talk later on the Roman Empire and the parallels between the fall of the Roman Empire and the times that we live in. And what's interesting is that Roman military spending during the fall of the Roman Empire increased. So government got so big that everybody was getting taxed, and and it's great, it's important to have tax and for government to provide services, but it kind of reached a point where the system couldn't take it anymore. And the more you make big systems that can ultimately break, the bigger the fall. The more you create connections between people and organizations, create that resilience, which is what we're trying to do, the more likely you can create something that's a bit more like Kevlar or a net, that at a local level there may be impact, but the rest of the system comes around it and helps it to rebound. And in fact, it gets stronger every time, because we realize, oh, we were weak in this area, let's strengthen that part of the net, if you like.
Yeah, great. And you're already starting to answer Nick's question, which was around the importance of relationship, but also he's saying, and trust as well. What is the element of trust in that as we start to bounce back together?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the language these days that we need to tap into is around being holistic and enabling people to be truly who they are in every context, whether it's in work, whether it's in politics, where sometimes we hide behind masks. We need to help people have the courage to be vulnerable with each other, and to kind of get to know new people. And that's been very, very difficult with Zoom. My team and I have been exploring different technologies which are much more able to allow us to hang out, to have water cooler moments, to have multiple conversations in the room. And I'm not talking about Zoom breakouts, good as that is. I think we need more of these things. We need to have more garden parties soon, because as you know, we're all feeding off quite old social capital, and we need a massive Marshall Plan of social capital investment, if you like, by all of us to rebuild the relationships and make new ones. And I think the last year has shown us the importance of that.
Yeah, Asta's actually just asking a question about the limitations of technology and other technology implications for how we might move forward. So, Zoom is clearly limited, and we spend a lot of time talking about that. Perhaps you could just talk just a little bit more about what that could look like.
Yeah, look, one thing, there are many friends of mine who are running away from technology, which I totally understand and respect, because people are burning out and there's too much Slack and WhatsApp, and it's invading every area of our lives, isn't it? But I would caution against rejecting technology. And I think one writer I remember reading talked about, even if you revert to a 15th century lifestyle and collect wood and go into the forest, you're still having to rely on technology. You're cutting wood, you're burning wood. There's a lot of work and stress involved in more simpler forms of life. We live the kind of lives that we live for a reason, right? The question is, what can we do with the technology we have, and particularly the kinds of technology that are pro being human and being in relationship? And actually, there is a difference between certain technologies. So, we're witnessing right now a rebirth of audio technologies. Clubhouse, which is a bit of an extreme version, but podcasting, stuff you can do when you're washing up, when you're, when you've got some downtime, and to expand our mind and to learn and to have a different rhythm. And I think we're going to need to be able to discern between those technologies that destroy our humanity and our time and our peace of mind, and those ones which enhance it. And that's something we're going to have to figure out. And it's time. The internet is not a baby anymore. We need to kind of really learn and figure out what we want to do with it.
So Nigel is shifting gears a little bit and asking a question about press interest, maybe even Westminster interest, on the contrast between US, UK, Europe, and Southeast Asia, New Zealand, Australia, and perhaps the need to be candid and honest in our reflections and going there. So I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, look, I think, although I don't think we're in a repeat of the lead up to World War I or World War II, kind of nations kind of looking to eventually fight against each other, I think we are in an era of greater competition between different places, and the rise of populism in many of our countries has shown that. But like I say, the war is less about, who do we invade, and it's more about who's standing at the end of a pandemic. And again, resilience is the key point here. Many of our politicians have to fight the current crisis, the humanitarian crisis, deal with the health and economic impact of the pandemic. But as we knew when we were fighting our own world war, when we came back from Dunkirk, this is going to be a long journey. Just because you've won the financial war and the health war doesn't mean you've actually got yourself ready to be the last man standing at the end of the 21st century. Right now, I worry about Europe. I wonder if they have a truly 21st century outlook and response to a changing world, because the temptation can be big is best, and we've seen that has limitations. We can't be complacent in the UK as well. Agile is great, but you've got to stay agile and not just rest on your laurels. And in the US, the challenge there is there's a lot of different competing interests. There's a lot of division. So we wish our American friends well to kind of mobilize and get themselves to a place where they preserve many of the founding values of that country. But the last thing we need is a big, kind of government in the US if it's going to be slow to act. We're going to need a nimble America. We may need cities in America and regions or parts of America to play the nimble role we need it to play in the world, because it's about speed and the willingness of the few to respond to situations, both at the top and all the way through a system. That's going to define who wins these virtual 21st century wars, right? You don't need to have any bullets exchanged to knock a country down now. You can just hack its hospitals or systems. So it's the speed of response and the agility of response to create a virus or to, repel a drone attack. That's what we need. And some of our systems around the world are not fit for that purpose.
Mm. And you started to talk there a little bit about, individual responses and state responses and things like that. So I'm just going to combine a couple of questions. Stephen is asking about, what does social fairness mean in this new era? To what extent is it down to individual action, or is it down to state stipulation, or possibly a third way around associative consensus building? And then Lewis as well asking the question about the optimal role of government in all of this. So perhaps you could reflect on those two ideas together.
Yeah, look, I used to be an arch decentralizer, and I'm probably known for that in much of my kind of time in politics. I now have a more balanced view. I think you do need a center, you do need international networks, and you need things that are local. There's a writer I really love called Leopold Kerr. He wrote a book called The Breakdown of Nations that argued that, you know, the best unit for a government is a city-state. And that's where you get the best art, you know, the Elizabethan Britain or Renaissance Italy. But the problem with that model is you can be easily invaded by an empire. So there's still a need, I think, for military cooperation at a kind of regional level. Think about NATO and that kind of thing. And some of these alliances may be long-term, they may be on the fly. I think we need to keep the channels open for trade globally, because that's the biggest way to help raise people out of poverty and to keep, you know, literally enable people to have affordable food, for example. But I think many of the things that we've probably treated as solely a national or international concern maybe now need to be more regional or even, you know, city or town level. Things that people feel are important to identity. You know, from everything from how often your bins get collected, maybe education, maybe health. There's certain things that are more closer to home, if you like. So I think that's important to bear in mind. I think the role of government has to shift over time from just delivery to scaling up and providing a kind of anchor buyer, if you like, anchor procurer of innovative new solutions that are agile. So if you think about the internet itself, it was procured by government through DARPA. And then you had all these companies, IBM and so on, that bought from the startups, and that created an ecosystem, you know, that offered solutions that government on its own couldn't solve. And I think that if government can ultimately play that role, so it's not to say small government is best, but what kind of work is government doing, and what room is it leaving for innovation to thrive, particularly innovation around resilience. So I don't want any more pet sharing apps, much as I love pets, or Internet of Things coffee machines. Can we steer the innovation to things that will solve real problems that people are facing in, you know, in our care system, in our housing crisis? How do we weight it towards climate? How do we weight the resources that government has towards things that ultimately affect real people on the ground?
And in terms of those resources, not just within nations, but among nations, what work is there to be done with democratizing supply chains? So Francis is just raising a report on that's come out in India about US allocation of resources that's causing problems with vaccines. So what work is there to be done around that allocation of resources within supply chains?
Yeah, personally, I think a lot of supply chain development needs to happen at the level of the international. We've got maritime law, really, and a framework there that's worked well. I think, you know, adding blockchain and other technology will enhance it. I think we need to be really careful to allow supplies to continue to flow around the world. Yes, to build resilience and some slack. So there needs to be reshoring. There needs to be ability, you know, to make masks on the fly. You know, some of those things we need to build in. But equally, we need to keep things flowing around the world. You know, I'm afraid for Europe, if Europe gets a reputation as a place to not make vaccines in because it won't leave Europe, that's going to make it harder to afford to make vaccines in Europe. So it becomes counterproductive. But equally, I think technologies, supply chain technologies like blockchain allow us to be much more granular, you know, about supplies and to satisfy local laws and local requirements in a more automated fashion. Whereas right now there's so much waste. I mean, half the food in the world rots in the field because our supply chains are not, you know, transparent and not, you know, flowing properly. Yeah,
that's great. So
and not resilient.
We're just going to do one more question, and I'm actually going to use this as a tee up to what we're doing next. There's a few other comments or questions we haven't got time for, so we might just come to the chat window and answer in the chat as we carry on. But George is saying, how do you use technology well without feeding the echo chambers and polarizations that are endemic in the big social platforms? And it occurs to me that I think Swarm is a potential for this, of how we can actually think better together. So love for you just to answer that and maybe tee us up as we move now to introduce David, a guest and a partner with us, and think about Swarm.
Yeah. Look, in our digital lives and in our analog lives, the way to respond to this is to consciously find people who are different from us and get to know them. And it's it's harder now to do that than ever. But I'll give you an example. People may or may not know I'm a soft Brexiteer, but I haven't removed any of the Remainers on my Twitter feeds. I still follow, I read, I'm a conservative, but I read The Guardian. It's really important that we consciously go beyond our comfort zones in terms of where we get news, who we connect with in our digital and social digital lives. And then, with the physical opening up, there's so many things we can get involved in where we get to meet other people in the analog sense, in their gardens, or, as we get back into high streets, to start to connect and, to be okay about being offended or hearing views that you don't like, and just going, you know what, people are people. Let's get to know each other, rich, poor, left, right, because that's what creates a resilient society, when we can know people in every sphere of life. We don't have to like the people always, but I think knowing and connecting with people who are different from you is an important part of resilience. And actually what we're learning, and this is what you're going to learn from this next section, as we enter the swarm demo situation, and sort of as we make some decisions together, the more diverse the life experiences of people involved in any decision, it turns out the better that decision. And maybe I'll let David and his team, explain more about that.
Thanks, Nat. Appreciate all of those things. So David, would love for you to come off mute and turn your camera on and take us through this next section. Now, David is the President and Chief Intelligence Officer of Unanimous AI, an exciting new technology that we have been getting to know a little bit more about and experimenting. And David's going to just tell us a little bit about that, and also give us a chance to get involved and have a go about this. So at some point, we're going to be giving you a web page to go to, a URL. Keep Zoom open. Don't close your Zoom window, because we want to keep talking about it. But David, over to you.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with everybody. It was wonderful to listen to Nat. And we are very, very happy to be working with the Shaftesbury Partnership and all of the other affiliate organizations and all of you on this tremendously exciting and important work. I am going to, Rich, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my video so that we can focus on the slides, if that's all right. It will just save some bandwidth. And I want to just quickly comment as a follow-on to all of the comments that Lord Wei was making about the importance of coming up with a utilizing technology and being able to apply it in ways that will allow more of us to work together, to collaborate, to be able to leverage our collective intelligence for ways that are going to allow us to solve problems, or at least address issues in ways that will allow us to become more resilient, to be able to respond more quickly and more satisfactorily for all of us, or at least more of us. And so we come at technology, and particularly artificial intelligence and machine learning, from a way that is sometimes controversial within the AI space. And that is, we start with the idea that people are intelligent, that people are smart. So much of the current mainstream AI and machine learning systems are set up to try and replace human cognition and human judgment. Our focus instead is to examine how we can take all of the information that people come into conversations with, into problem solving with. Everybody comes with their own information, their knowledge, their own insights, very importantly, their own experiences, whether it is specific to the problem or general from the way in which they've lived their lives, and being able to apply their intuition and instincts in ways that are going to be contributory, to be able to be to build to greater levels and greater solutions that are more satisfactory. And so we start with this question of how can we best harness the intelligence of human groups for these purposes? So when we started, we think about how does nature tackle these problems? We look to the birds, we look to the bees, and the fish and the ants. Numerous social creatures have evolved within nature to find methods that amplify the intelligence of their societies, of their groups. Notably, nature doesn't take votes or polls or conduct surveys, and it doesn't have historical data sets for it to analyze. Instead, nature forms systems of its creatures. This image that you see on the right here is this ball of fish, this school of fish, would also be known as a superorganism by biologists. It is formed, these fish have formed this system that is so tightly interconnected, that have feedback loops within that ball that, that biologists refer to an emergence of a swarm intelligence, a capability that emerges when these groups come together to be able to address problems that are beyond the capabilities of them individually. It is frankly why birds flock and fish school and bees swarm. It is because when they work together, they are smarter than they are when they're by themselves. As a case in point, we take our inspiration from the swarming behavior of honeybees and how they work together to be able to identify the location or the best location for a new colony, a new hive. When the bees scout bees identify candidates for their new location, their new hive, this turns out to be a multivariable optimization problem. Researchers have discovered that the bees consider dozens and dozens of different variables. But these problems, this multivariable optimization problem is far beyond the capabilities, the cognitive capabilities of any single bee. Yet, when working together, the swarm is able to identify the optimal solution with greater than 80% accuracy. Not only that, but has been doing so for millennia. So really the question that we started with was, if the birds and the bees and the fish can get smarter by forming such systems, can people do it? How can we enable humans to be able to take the benefits that, that the natural world is able to produce in these groups and establish it in a way that our technology will allow humans to be able to do so? And so on the right here, you can see what an artificial swarm might look like. It is the interface within the technology that we're going to use in just a moment. And in this particular case, you can watch each of those gold magnets is being managed by an individual person. And that group of people are working together to be able to answer a problem that has been posed for them. The technology allows the group to work together as a real-time system, and the group is then able to work individually to act and react and interact, but the system is also able to reflect the strength of their convictions so that the overall solution really optimizes and reflects the complete opinion of the group, the optimal solution for that group. We've been doing this for some time now with leading brands around the world, both in commercial and industry, with nonprofit associations and academic institutions. We have a large amount of research papers that have been published and are available on our website. I'll very quickly mention a couple of case studies, and then I hope that we'll all work together in just a minute to do a live swarm exercise. The UN, through its IPC Food Security Partnership, is piloting using swarm right now to make forecasts of regional food security conditions, to be able to improve their analysis and classification of famine and the other levels of food security in order to be able to be more reactive, more responsive to the changing conditions in various countries and regions around the world. We worked with Stanford Medical School to be able to, on research that has been published in leading journals around international journals, where we were able to show doctors, in this case radiologists, working together as a swarm and with our technology, and significantly reducing their levels of errors in their diagnostic capabilities. A few months ago, we applied swarm technology to the US presidential elections and forecasting and polling data, and we're able to correctly forecast all 11 battleground states, which is really quite, which was actually published in the Wall Street Journal as a example of how the future of polling may occur, given all of the limitations that we've seen recently. A few years ago, we did some work on being able to enable how competing groups with competing interests can reach socially optimal solutions with incredible success. We then, just before the pandemic shut everything down, we were actually working with Nesta out of their offices in London, where we were able to actually run some experiments with groups of conservative voters and Labour Party supporters in order to be able to see how we can allow them to find more satisfactory middle grounds, particularly when we compare that against traditional voting methods. So a variety of different ways in which we hope to be working with and know that we have the potential for working with Shaftesbury and other organizations to really advance this idea of resiliency. Now, I'm going to ask you, if you would, to join me in Swarm for a live exercise. If you will open up a browser, the Chrome, Firefox, or Safari browser, or if you have the very latest version of Microsoft's browsers, unfortunately, some of the older versions of Microsoft are not compatible with our technology, but if you will open up your browser and point it to hivex.swarm.ai, you'll be prompted to provide an entry code, and you can use 465881 as you can see on your screen. And you will then join me in Swarm, where I'll be able to lead you through a set of exercises here over the next 5 to 10 minutes. So I see a couple of people who are joining already. As you join, put your mouse pointer next to the glass puck that you see in the middle of the screen, and your mouse will turn into a magnet. We'll let a number of people, or everybody seems to be joining right now. It's wonderful to see you come in. Again, put your mouse pointer next to the glass puck in the middle, and your pointer will turn into a magnet. Your magnet is green. Everybody else's magnet is gold. And so I am going to, and what we're going to do today is we're going to combine our collective input with the Swarm AI technology to gather insights and unlock the collective intelligence of this group. So you will use your magnet to pull on that glass puck. What we'll do is I will pose some questions, and you'll start by pulling on that puck to try and bring it to an answer choice that you will see distributed around the screen. Oops. You'll see it distributed around the screen. And then you start pulling with your magnet towards your preferred answer. You will need to pull continuously with your magnet. If you're not pulling, you are not contributing. So we really want everybody to be contributing the whole time. A few things to keep in mind: the closer your magnet is to the puck, the stronger your pull. And if you're, and we want you to pull continuously. Now, overall, our goal is to work together to find the best possible answer for each question. So you'll start by pulling for your first choice and continue to pull for your first choice as long as you think it's reasonable. But if you be open to compromise if and when you think that it's appropriate. So let's start off with a warm-up question. Let's try a question here and see how everybody feels working with this interface. I'll pose a question. You'll see it at the top of the screen. And then let's work together to answer as best we can. What is the most important invention of the 20th century? Set your magnet now during the 3, 2, 1 countdown, and let's work together to try and find the best answer that we can. We'll want to hold the puck over that answer node, over that light for about 2 seconds, and it will now register. Terrific. So let's jump in. I see that we've only have about 5 minutes left. So let's just jump right into a set of questions that we have prepared here for the resilience series. And the first question we want to consider is, what kind of shock is most likely to impact the UK in the coming decade? What kind of shock is most likely to impact the UK in the next 10 years? You can see the options distributed around the hexagon. Now let's set our magnets during the 3, 2, 1 countdown. Wonderful. That happened very, very quickly. In fact, we have a conviction score there of 90%, which indicates how well aligned the group was. A lot of confidence in the choice there of cyber warfare. Very interesting. The next question we're going to address is, what technologies should resource holders focus on to best build resilience? Let's work together to see if how quickly we can come, or what's the best answer rather we could come to together. Wonderful. And I think you can see there that there was a significant amount of deliberation actually that was occurring there as well. And I think it's important for you to understand, obviously we're not going to dive deeply into the technology, but I want you to understand that everybody's contributions, all of the data about how people are supporting all of these choices and how that might change over time, all of that is recorded within the Swarm AI's calculations and analysis, and is able to be considered as we consider how the group deliberated this choice. So although we arrived at renewable and distributed energy, we also know that quantum computing and encryption and other items were also being well supported and well considered during the entire process. Let's ask one more question. And in this one, this is a little different. We're going to consider 6 options, and now we want to consider which part of Britain is least resilient. Which is least resilient of these different systems within Britain? Excellent. Thank you for that. And I think you can see clearly how this can give us now some guidance as we kick off the resilience series and start considering the overall agenda for moving forward. Rich, I'll hand it back to you now.
Thanks so much, David. And I hope that you found that an interesting technology, and that you were able to get in. I know some people maybe weren't quite able to jump across, but we're going to be using this a lot more. So if you didn't get a chance to take part, then please don't worry. There will be more opportunities in the future. So as we come towards the end of our time, Just want to say a few thank yous and point to some resources for the future. We're really grateful to Unanimous for not only enabling us to use this technology, but also for David coming on and leading us through that this evening. If you are interested in this or want to find out more, then you can email us at info@spxventures, and we will talk with you and help you find the best way forwards. We'd also like to say thank you to WeWebinar, our partners who often help us with online events. If you are looking to arrange an event, then please do get in touch with them. And for those who were able to be at the pre-event drinks in VR, Frame and Verbella, their parent company, are also a partner of ours. If you want to know anything more about any of these, please do get in touch with us. Thank you again to Nat for his stimulating thoughts this evening, and thank you to all of you for taking the time out of busy weeks to come and join with us. We are looking forward to the rest of this series, and do check out spx.ventures/events, where you can see the ongoing program as we build it out. But we will be in touch about those future events, and we look forward to catching up again with you very soon. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.